Perhaps tomorrow I could borrow a horse and have a look around. Such an odd feeling. Driving up to the house, Seacombe, and standing by the door to welcome me. I've done it so many times in my imagination. The clock struck the hour as we drove up. I even seemed to recognize the sound of the bell.
She seems like a very modern woman in a Victorian world in this Serenity.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And because, as you know, du Maurier wrote the book in the 1950s, so she was, writing about a woman who's sexually liberated and wants to work to earn her own living, and shock horror, believes in financial freedom and that she shouldn't be a possession of a man through marriage, but all very radical ideas in mid-19th century England. So yeah, it gives a kind of very modern edge to a classic period drama.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see that character in that situation, just because, she's still in the corsets and she's still in the very, very restricted world and basically at the mercy of a guy.
Men, yeah.
I've read, obviously, when you read the script, you weren't sure of the character yourself, you weren't sure what had actually gone on, because du Maurier makes it very unclear as well. So how do you approach that in that case?
Well, the script was definitely ambiguous, and I called the director and I said, did she or didn't she? He said, I don't know. And then I had to make a decision in order to play her, because obviously she would know if she were a femme fatale or just a victim of misogynistic 19th century England. But he didn't want me to tell him, so I kept it a secret from him. And we've actually never discussed it. So he, I guess, as the director, with his male gaze, he wanted to experience the same thing the audience are and that Philip is, and not being quite sure what she's up to.
Yeah, and Philip himself, I mean, the dynamic between them is fascinating too, because on one hand he's a young man, he seems damaged, he seems kind of quite sympathetic in a lot of ways. On the other hand, he's really dangerous to her at the same time. So it's a sort of, she's on edge, she's in a difficult situation, I guess.
Well, if you believe what she says, that her husband became very sick and became violent and delusional before his death, and was, she says, his hands at her throat, and the same thing happens with Philip. He kind of he loses his temper and throttles her, and she says, I can't believe that this is happening again. And the question is whether she's fabricating that story or not, and that's up to the audience to decide.
Yeah. Are you finding it easier these days to find these kind of interesting, layered, complicated roles? Because I think for a while there, Hollywood wasn't making very many of them.
There's definitely has not been enough films written from the female point of view, by women, for women, with female directors, and I'm sure you know all the statistics of how many female directors there are and how many screenplay writers there are and playwrights and producers, but the problem obviously isn't just in the world of storytelling and fiction making. The problem is it's a global problem here on planet Earth, and stories are just a symptom of that at the moment. But I mean, I'm definitely finding roles that I find interesting as a woman, but I find there's a part of me, I mean, we have to address it because it is happening, but there's a part of me that finds this conversation absurdist. Like, why that I would say, speaking as a woman, I feel like saying, well, speaking as a panda, some endangered outlier species that doesn't get very represented in stories. I mean, we're just half the world. It's very odd that people have this conversation without any sense of alarm. I mean, it's alarming and absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And you've directed in the past a short film. Are you thinking of doing it again?
I doubt I'll direct again in the near future, but I'm producing and I'm acting in film. So I just finished a film that I optioned the novel and produced it and brought it to the screen, acted in it, and that's it's a very like a holistic, fun experience. Yeah.